Good evening, viewers, and welcome to another episode of CovidCastJA. We are at June 9th. June 9th? Actually, we're at June 10th. So this means that we're at episode 57 of CovidCastJA. And CovidCastJA is brought to you by the private sector organization of Jamaica with our sponsors, the NCB Group and the JMMB Group. Today on episode 55, 57. First I say it's the 9th, then I say it's 55. Episode 57, we're going to be talking about vaccinations. What's next for Jamaica? So, we hear lots of discussions about vaccinations. The anti-vaxxers, persons who are grappling for vaccinations. And as with a lot of things, we provide our own stories of what is really happening with vaccinations and how people feel about it. Tonight, we're actually going to get some here to hear from Lauren Peart, who is the CEO of Blue Dot Insights, and he's going to be taking us through some of the data on how people are viewing this whole vaccination and whether or not they should take the vaccination. So we'll actually have some data on that tonight. In addition, as we continue to talk about vaccinations in the workplace, we will be joined by Carla Ann Harris-Roper, and she's going to be taking us through considerations that we have to make in the workplace, some of the legislation that looks at even how we can treat with or how we can interpret how we can treat with vaccinations. And then we'll be joined by Nicola Madden-Gregg, Group Director of Marketing and Sales for the Courtly Hospitality Group and the first VP of the Caribbean Hotel and Tourism Association. And she's going to be telling us about vaccinations in the tourist industry and giving us a little insight of what is happening in the tourism industry. So we have a very exciting episode ahead. And if you're joining us for the first time, this is CovidCastJA. You would have missed 56 episodes, and these episodes are available on smallbusinessportal.com. They are also available on our Facebook page, on YouTube, so many places for you to catch up on CovidCastJA. CovidCastJA is a specialized business program where we bring various issues to our micro, small, and medium enterprises in very simple language so that we can all understand what's going on. This is a production of the private sector organization of Jamaica, brought to you by our sponsors, NCB Group and the JMMB Group. Now, this week, as with most weeks of CovidCast, we provide a memo with information coming out of our episodes. Now, this week, we have the memo. Let me just show you what it looks like, just in case you've never seen our memo. COVID-19 vaccine, what's next? The implication for employment law in Jamaica. So can you imagine that if you sign up with us by emailing us at sme@psoj.org, you can every week get a copy of our memo. And this week's memo, Carla Ann Harris-Roper has gone into some detail in very simple and easy to understand language for some of the considerations that as employers, you need to be thinking about with vaccinations, looking at the various statutes, but also as employees, some of the things that you need to be aware of. Can you imagine? So email us at sme@psoj.org. I see Andreen Mace here, first time joining. Welcome, welcome. I see Sandra Palmer, welcome. Romaine, welcome. Max North, welcome. Rajesh, glad that you are here for another episode of CovidCast. So our first guest is the CEO of Blue Dot Insights Limited, Lauren Peart. Now, Lauren is a seasoned entrepreneur and information technologist with a depth of experience in research and the area of data intelligence. As the founder of Blue Dot and brainchild behind the company's data intelligence methodologies, he's credited with bringing a unique service offering to the regional marketing industry. He has honed a depth of experience in research techniques, consumer neuroscience, what of his excitement, retail intelligence, and data mining. He began his career by working within the software engineering industry with advanced integrated systems. While there, he served as tech support manager and developed his technology skills and effective client service management systems. From having the responsibility of over 5,000 merchants in Jamaica, Bahamas, and the Cayman Islands. Welcome, welcome, Lauren. We
Thank
are
you.
very excited to have you here. I know you have some interesting data to share with us. But before I see Vivian is Vivian's first time. Vivian here, so Lauren coming on tonight. So Vivian is on for the first time. Angelo, welcome. Monica, welcome. Welcome our CovidCast viewers. So as we said, we're going to be getting some actual data on how people feel about vaccination. So we don't have to just put our finger in the ear and say, because my neighbor did say so, I saw it go. So Lauren, can you tell us just a little bit more about what you do as CEO of Blue Dot and this data intelligence that you are able to pull together so that business decisions can be made? Tell us a little bit more about it.
All right. Hi, Rochelle, and thank you for having me. And thank you and welcome to everyone that's joining in. So I'm Lauren. I'm the CEO of Blue Dot, and we are an insights agency. And what I mean by that is that we allow our clients to make better decisions with data, and we provide any type of data, any type of insights that allow them to have peace of mind, which is what I say the business that we're actually in is that we're in the business of peace of mind, meaning we allow our clients to have peace of mind when they're making decisions. So we have a whole suite of solutions, from market research to data analytics and a whole bunch of technical stuff like neuroscience, which that you just mentioned. But yeah, in short, we help anybody to make better decisions with data.
Yes, and Lauren is helping us today on CovidCast. So he's helping us, he's helping you tonight as viewers. So he actually did a dedicated survey for this show. Can you tell us a little bit about the survey that you did,
Right.
and methodology that you use, and then we can get into some results.
All right. So I'm going to be showing data from two surveys. One that we did before the first batch of vaccines came in, and which that we think we did that in late February, early March, and then one that we just did today, very quickly, just so that we could give some context to the discussion. Okay. So I'm going to be taking you through that now.
And for the people like me who love data, we are waiting with bated breath.
All right. So just to go through very quickly, I hope everyone is seeing my screen. Can you just confirm that you're seeing my screen?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I'm seeing your screen, and Lauren, we can make some of this information available for those.
Yeah, I will. I'll actually put the links to both surveys in the chat.
Thank you very much.
Right.
Thanks.
Yeah, man, because it's online and available.
Okay.
So from the sample that we took, and I just have to preface it. So we did this online today very quickly. So we didn't get to go into the field. So even though it's not nationally representative, it's indicative. So what we're seeing here, of the sample that we took online, 24%, almost 25% of them said that they did take the vaccine. The national figured statistic is actually less than 10%. So 10% of the population has been vaccinated. But of the population that we surveyed, just about 25% said that they did take it, just for that context. Of course, most of them, over 85% approximately, had AstraZeneca, obviously, because that's what's available here in Jamaica. 6% Pfizer, 3% Moderna, and 6% J&J. And of course, if you're asking, so we have quite a few people who would have flown, gotten the vaccine overseas. Okay. So again, of the sample, 91% of the sample took the vaccine in Jamaica, 6% in the US, and about 2% in Canada and some other countries. Okay. I see one here, Cayman, Canada, etc. When they were asked whether it was likely, unlikely, highly likely that they would take the vaccine once it becomes available in Jamaica, just about 50% of this sample, said that they were either likely or highly likely to take the study, and about 30% have said that they're neither likely or unlikely, which you could port as them being unsure. And to your point earlier, you mentioned something about the campaigns. A public education campaign can sway that cohort of people who are unsure of the sample.
Okay, and this was a sample that was taken before the vaccine.
This one, what I'm showing you now was done today. So I'm going to show you now the one that was. So just remember this: 50% of those that were sampled today said that they were likely or highly likely to take the vaccine. I'm going to show you now the results of the one that was done in earlier this year, in around March. And if you're looking at it now, just 22 and 12, that's just 33% at that time in early March when we did the study, said that they were likely. The figure for unsure, those who were unsure, was 27%, and highly likely and unlikely was very high, was close to 40%. So just to compare again, in March when we did the study, this was the week before the first vaccines landed. 35% approximately said that they would take the vaccine or likely to take the vaccine, compared to now where we have close to 50% who are saying that they are likely to take the vaccine. So that's that's very hopeful, I think.
Yeah. And so, well, we'll go through the data, but this could also be attributed to a lot more public education and as
definitely
for other persons who have taken it and realized that they didn't have any horns or anything, or
right, right, or 5G. Yes. And also this was before we had that very bad spike in around early March when the second wave started. So that could be attributed to that as well.
Okay.
All right. And then we also asked, why are you unwilling to take the vaccine? I'll go into the raw data for that, but let me skip that. In terms of comfort level, they were asked to rank, the following vaccines in order of highest to lowest comfort level. How this is displayed is Pfizer would be number one in terms of most comfortable, and Sputnik, which is the Russian vaccine, according to this sample, they're least comfortable with that vaccine. Moderna would be number two, AstraZeneca number three, ironically, in terms of comfort.
In terms of comfort.
All right. We also asked, would you take the COVID-19 vaccine if it becomes mandatory, if it becomes a mandatory requirement for your job? 57% have said yes. That will give context to the discussion that's coming up. 31% said unsure, not sure why. 11.2% said no, they would not take it if it was a requirement for the job.
Okay.
We'll ask the same question about travel requirements. 55% said they would take it if taking the COVID vaccine is mandatory for travel. Close to 30% said they're unsure about that. We also asked, considering all that is happening around you, are you more or less fearful of COVID now compared to a year ago? Close to 60% said that they were less fearful. I think I thought it was very interesting when I saw it. And 32% said, just around the same as last year, and 10% said they were more fearful. Okay. So I think that's actually very, very interesting. This could be, to be honest, I think this less fearful has a little of COVID fatigue in it, and the mortality rate is low. So I think that may be attributed to, or you can attribute that to why this, most people are saying that they're less fearful.
Okay, and before you go on, sure. Lauren, just looking in the comments, Tiki Ricky says, what's the purpose? It doesn't protect nor stop from transmitting. So we know Tiki not so really into it. Tiki also says, the question is, why do we need a vaccine if it does nothing for you? Sandra says the numbers are improving, but at a slow rate. Jennifer is fully vaccinated as of today. You are welcome, Jamaica.
Nice. Nice.
So to our COVID guests, please be a part of this discussion. Please insert your views of the vaccine. Again, we're pulling together actual data here about how our people feel about vaccines. So we want to be a part of it. Sandra says the numbers are improving at a slow rate, and in response, the vaccine minimizes the impact.
All right.
All right, Lawrence, continue.
All right. So we also asked a very interesting question. We wanted to know, how do you feel about the state of vaccinations in Jamaica? So that was an open-ended question. So we collected quite a bit of verbatim responses. So are you seeing the Excel sheet?
Seeing it, Lauren.
All right. So I'm showing you the raw response, the verbatim responses. So, there's 400 responses. I'll just skim through, starting from the top. So again, the question is, how do you feel about the state of vaccinations in Jamaica? Uncomfortable. I don't feel comfortable. Someone here is saying there's no choice in the vaccine you receive. Slow moving, government could do more. Need access to supplies in the parish. This person says, well, for me, it's okay because I see nothing wrong with what they're doing. And besides, vaccines are a pre-state of the virus, so you will get sick and it depends on your immune system. All right, I don't know. I don't understand what that means. I am still unsure how to feel, as I know vaccines usually take years to develop. We saw this a lot, especially when we go out on the road into the field to collect data. This is a common concern.
Yes.
About how quickly the vaccines were developed. Enough information is not being given about the vaccination sites, hence persons are not getting vaccinated. So I think I'll actually share this with the Ministry of Health. We should.
Yes,
the vaccination process is slow. Why is the government paying people to take it when people have been looking to the government for money for actual emergencies? So I did see a lot of comments similar to this online. Minister Clark would have announced yesterday that I think he'd used the term grant, a $10,000 grant. So I think that's what this is in response to. Again, there's 400 responses.
And that's responses that we can now share with the ministry.
Yes, for sure. But
from the general commentary that you were seeing, there is still a bit of questioning and apprehension, or people kind of seemingly warming up?
No, I think 15 months in, there's still too much apprehension and misunderstanding of the vaccines. I think there's too much. My personal opinion is that I think the more public education campaigns need to be done. When we're on the ground talking to the average Jamaican, the common person, the common man, or the masses, there's still a lot of miscommunication, misunderstanding, misconception of COVID on a whole, but in particular the vaccines.
Vaccines, yeah.
Right. Yeah.
I'm seeing some additional comments here. Please keep sending them in. Liz Sim says, why can't we get the Cuban vaccine? And Yandiaya responded, I think people are also considering where the vaccine is made. Word is, if it's Cuba, then they will take it. So government can consider that. Claudette says it's a means for the country to normalize, I have no objection. I received my first jab. Tiki Ricky, loving the discussion with you. You say, please, can one explain to me what's the purpose when you have a 99.62 to 72% chance of surviving with this virus? And why is it that the government paying people to take the so-called virus that every government paying people to take when they don't even want to pay you for what you deserve? So we're seeing Tiki Ricky needed to have done that survey today.
Right, similar sentiments, yes.
The average Jamaican seems misinformed. Angela says, I took my first shot the very first chance I got. So we're kind of seeing the responses, people's views all over the place. Some persons, even without further information, are thinking, if we're going to normalize, if I need this to normalize, I will take it and move on, because there is some COVID fatigue that people are like, whatever we can do, let's do it to move. And there's some persons who are like, why do I need to take it anyway? Because I have a pretty good chance of survival. Some people think, well, we don't have enough information about it. So there's still a bit of just swaying of views.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. There still is.
In terms of the analysis that you've done and the data you've collected, have you seen any differences with how persons in the corporate area versus persons in the rural areas, how they view the vaccine?
Definitely. So there's a lot more misinformation the further outside of the corporate area and the urban areas you go.
Okay.
And there's also a lot less likelihood to take the vaccine the further outside of the urban areas you go. People in rural Jamaica still think you can, drink. There's some people, who we interviewed, still think you can drink white rum, and to get rid of it. So yeah, so like I said, I think the public education needs to be improved. We all know what the disinformation that happens through WhatsApp groups and all of the conspiracy theories, and that just isn't helping the situation at all. So there has to be some counter communication to counter the misinformation. I think that's critical at this point.
Okay. In terms of demographics, age and gender demographics, did you find any, what kind of results did you see from age and gender?
So older people and religious people are the least likely to take the vaccine.
Really?
Yes.
Okay. Older people, because you would have thought older persons would have wanted to take the vaccine.
That's what you would think. But when you look at the national picture, so of course within urban areas, yes. Yeah. But when you look at the national picture, because we did do a national study, I just can't share that specific data. The older people, and especially those who are very religious, devout Christians, I hate to say, they just don't think that they should be taking the vaccine.
Okay. And in terms of gender, did you see anything affected by gender? Like were women likely to take?
Not really. It's almost split down the middle.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I see Angela says, Juliet says, I'm due my second shot on the 19th of June, but I haven't been contacted about where to go. And I saw in some of the responses that people weren't sure where to go. Tiki says, okay, I've actually done my research, and based on what's been in the media, knowing that the vaccine Jamaicans getting is one from India, why isn't it helping the people in India? So why would it help us in Jamaica? Rajesh says, I've taken my first dose and I feel great. Can't wait for the second one. Sandra said she didn't get that impression, and I think that's from some of the data that you gave earlier. Okay. Julian is in the US. Hi, welcome, Julian. Thinking of taking the vaccine, but I was told I can only get the Johnson due to the fact that I'm here for only 2 weeks. I'm not sure the Johnson is safe enough. And we did see that persons had their preference of which one of the vaccines they would.
Right.
Jerome,
and we know that we're actually getting I think 1.5 million doses of the Johnson & Johnson in Jamaica. So, I'm hoping that, we'll get more uptake with that.
Because it's a one dose.
That's one dose, one shot. Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Jerome says, did the survey ask people suggest what incentives the government can offer to get persons to take the vaccine? Great question, Jerome.
Yeah, that's a good question. No, we didn't ask. Maybe we'll do a follow-up, survey to ask that. But that would actually be key, because we do want as many people to take the vaccine as possible, so that we can get back to our lives, properly.
Yeah, I actually had COVID, so I had to wait to get my vaccine.
Right.
As the way was even slightly clear, I ran to get my vaccine.
Right.
So Lauren, 2 last questions for you. In regard to the data that you have, I know you do consumer neuroscience, and I love those things. Were you able to do any analysis just generally? What would you say generally about that from the data, the state of how we see vaccinations as a country?
So I think in comparing, the survey that we did just before COVID, just before the first batch of vaccines came, even before it was announced, and the public education campaign started, there was, of course, apprehension, the same fears around, how quickly the vaccines were developed, and of course, uncertainty around which one to actually take and the actual science behind each. There's still some misconception around how the vaccines were created. Just recalling, a lot of people still think that. I think only 2 of these vaccines are actually virus based, as in come from compounds from the virus. That the mRNA is a whole different process. But anyway, to answer your question, it's interesting to look at public perception and opinion pre the spike, pre the second wave that just happened recently, where the healthcare sector was, in shambles. I'm unfortunately, I'm sure a lot of people would have lost some family or friends during that time, and I think that has had an impact on the willingness to take the vaccine now, which is almost 20% higher than when we did it 4 months ago.
Yeah. And I think, as you say too, that even though the mortality rate taken as a big percentage is really low, we've been able to manage that. But I think all of us now know someone, and many of us have lost close relatives.
Exactly.
Many of us have also witnessed persons. I didn't have a lot of symptoms, but I have had so many persons who have had very, very serious implications. I've lost close family members.
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah, so there is also the protection of ourselves, the protection of others. We had a question. Thank you, Sandra asked. Where do you go for to get your second dose? You are to bring your card with you. It's also recommended you also bring your identification again with you, and you go back to the place where you took the first jab. The system, sometimes we don't trust the systems in Jamaica, but I think a lot of effort has been put in by the Ministry of Health, and you can trust to go back for the second dose. There's still a lot, as Lauren, you keep saying, the public education, the public.
Yeah, man, no, yeah, because we're underground talking to the people, right? And yes, the mortality rate is low, all things considered, but a life is a life is a life. And I think that even more importantly, the strain that it put on the healthcare sector, where people who had scheduled surgeries and people who just had emergencies that they would have normally been able to get taken care of, because of the situation in the hospitals where the staff was stressed, there were little or no beds. That's the real issue. It is what happens to the healthcare sector because there's so many COVID patients. That's what the real problem is. So it's not just about the fact that yes, the mortality rate is low. It is everything else and all the other procedures that can't happen because the hospitals are full with people. So I think, what's his name? Ricky Tiki. That's right. That's speaking to you directly. That is why we need to get people vaccinated, so that the strain on the healthcare sector can be as minimized as much as possible, so that instances or incidents of other health related issues, those can be taken care of.
Yes, thank you so much, Lauren. And I see Juliet asking, do persons with hypertension, diabetes, etc. have more side effects of the vaccine? I can personally say that I took several persons with underlying ailments and issues. I drove them myself to get their vaccinations, a lot of older people, and they were fine, actually. None of them had effects. So There are some persons who have had side effects. I think for the most part, Lauren, I don't know if you have any data on what the side effects have been for Jamaica. And also, somebody asked, do we know what other types of vaccines will be available? We know Johnson and Johnson should shortly be available.
Right, and we saw. I think I saw an article today that the U.S. government is purchasing 500 million vaccines to distribute across the world. I'm not sure what the distribution amongst the various ones are going to be.
Yes. Right. So, Lauren, thank you very, very much.
Thank you so much
for sharing this data, and you certainly opened up a lot of conversation.
I hope so.
Please keep the comments going. We were just joined by Lauren Peart, CEO of Blue Dot Insights, and now we're moving the conversation to Carla Ann Harris Roper, a very familiar face on CovidCast. She is an esteemed attorney at law who was admitted to practice in Jamaica in October 1997. So a long time she did practice. She holds a Bachelor of Laws degree from the University of the West Indies, a certificate of legal education from the Norman Manley Law School, and a Master of Laws in Employment Law from the University of East Anglia in the United Kingdom. She's also the recipient of the Alcon Jamaica undergraduate and postgraduate scholarships and is a Chevening Scholar. She's currently a PhD candidate. Am I saying that correct? Yes, she'll shortly be Dr. Carla Ann Harris. But in the meantime, she is the co-author of the groundbreaking and highly regarded book, which I'm looking straight up on right now, Commonwealth, Caribbean Employment and Labor Law, published in 2014. She's a proud member of the Jamaica Bar Association, and she established her consultancy, Employment Matters Caribbean, a firm that provides comprehensive advisory services in various aspects of employment and industrial relations practice across multiple Caribbean jurisdictions. Carla Ann Harris Roper, welcome, welcome, welcome.
Hi, Rochelle. Hi, everyone. I was just looking, Rochelle. Maybe I was on COVID number 3 or 4 from April last year when we were actually in the studio. So
yes.
Yeah.
Yes. When before that, the initial 5 o'clock curfew, where we could meet in a social distanced studio.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, we were talking about some of the issues with layoffs and redundancy. Right. And the new major employment issue arising out of COVID is vaccinations.
Indeed, it is.
And Carla has provided for us implications for employment law in Jamaica, the COVID-19 vaccines. I mean, ladies and gentlemen, you have to have this memo. This is something that you need to be walking around with. So, Carla, can you tell us a little bit about the current employment considerations that you have found coming out of COVID, and in particular, these discussions now around the vaccine? You heard some of the data that Lauren prepared.
Yeah, it was very interesting data, especially the information that he shared in respect of, whether or not persons would be inclined to take the vaccine if it was a condition of employment. I think he had said 57%. Said that they would, so that's interesting data, coming from Blue Dot. But to answer your question, we should recognize that even before COVID, an employer has a duty to provide safe workplaces under the common law, as we call it. Yeah. The statute, meaning any legislation passed by Parliament, and specifically a very important piece of legislative framework, the Labor Relations Code. Mm-hmm. Many people may not have recognized, but the code itself spoke specifically to what employers should do in terms of, stopping the prevention of an epidemic or infectious disease. Oh. So basically, the common law that you should when you're operating a business, should have competent fellow workers. So, if you know somebody is inclined to horseplay, for example, you ought properly to ensure that you speak to them and make sure that they don't do that, because otherwise the employer could be vicariously liable. For example, a safe plant and equipment, and for the purposes of this discussion, a safe place of work and a safe system of working, right? Now, from that common law position, then you move to the statute, that if you have any specific legislative frameworks that puts a duty on an employer, say for example, or Factories Act, that if you're working in particular factories, they have specific guidelines that tell you, for example, exits, entrances, air quality, things of that nature, then the employer is bound by that. And importantly, the Occupational Safety and Health Act, well, it's a very long in gestation, even from my days at the Ministry of Labor, over 20 years. Ever so slowly but surely, we are heading towards there being a comprehensive legal framework to deal with occupational safety and health. And we can safely say that, this whole COVID could, or would rather, be subsumed under those general principles. So that's the first thing. An employer does have that duty in law. So in the context of COVID then, how should the employer be going about making sure that this duty is met? Yes? What we're saying is that they should take all reasonable steps to ensure that their workplace is safe.
Okay. So some of
And
that employers would have been required to do under even the Disaster
correct.
Management
That's
Act.
exactly where I was heading.
Okay.
Because in as much as we're going to talk about the vaccine, I think it is absolutely important that people recognize that there are other things that are already mandated under the DRM, um, and the protocols that have been provided by the Ministry of Health and Wellness that have been found to reduce the risk to persons. So, for example, ensure that there are sanitizing stations, social distancing within workplaces, the wearing of face shields and masks, or even going into, for example, workplaces, and you see these plexiglass barriers that have been put up to provide barriers between the staff and the customer or the client. Those are all aspects that are not physically invasive like the vaccine, but and are mandated. And so, I sometimes kind of smile to myself when there's this fixation by some persons that you have to get the vaccine, you have to get the vaccine, which I'm not saying you shouldn't, but it is not a silver bullet. You have to recognize that there are other things that have very well been put in place to manage the risk. And those are things that an employer should ensure that they do. Also, utilizing flexible work arrangements, so that persons can either stagger their work hours so they don't have numbers of persons gathered, or working from home, or things of that nature. So those are already protocols that have been put in place for that purpose.
Yes.
So having said that, we move into the vaccine. So the vaccine is another measure that, if persons are vaccinated, would help in terms of the employer providing a safer place of work. And that is something that needs to be contemplated, right? Now, one of the things, a couple of things employers need to appreciate when they're looking at this whole question of the vaccine, and making it mandatory. So I wanted to raise these three issues before looking at what the employer can and cannot do. Number one, as we know at this point in time, the COVID-19 vaccine is not universally accessible here, right? We know that we had the blitz, and we have had various opportunities for persons to receive it. But as Lauren had said, right now I think we're close to 10%. And that is as we get the vaccine, as it becomes available, and we are ensuring that the persons who we call frontline workers, those who are more at risk, those are the persons who will get priority. And so for an employer to mandate that everybody gets the vaccine in a context where the vaccine is not universally acceptable, an
Or,
employer needs to available. They
yeah.
need to contemplate that, because if
Mm-hmm.
it's with the greatest will in the world, a 20-year-old who may very well want to take the vaccine, certainly in the earlier stages, would not be eligible to receive it.
Yes.
And it would be incongruous for an employer to say you must be vaccinated in a case where it's not available, right? Second thing is, some persons have said it, the vaccine does not say that you will not never catch COVID.
Mm-hmm.
What it is not that you cannot contract it and you cannot transmit it when you have the vaccine. My understanding of the scientific studies is that what it does is reduce the risk of you having contracted it from having very violent reactions, in terms of how you react to it, and the prospect of fatalities are greatly reduced,
Yes.
right? So even if everybody gets the vaccine within your workplace, for example, if you are still front facing with other customers, it doesn't mean that you can't get it. And it's not only in your workplace that you may get COVID. So if you get it and your household doesn't have it, or your social circle doesn't have it, then there's still the likelihood that you can get it. And those are things that an employer
An
also
employer.
have to contemplate.
Yeah. So as an employer, then, as you said, the vaccine on its own is not a silver bullet. There are still the other measures for creating that safe place of work,
That's correct.
masks, etc., that the employer still has to ensure that those things are done.
Yes, and those are mandated. So it amazes me sometimes to hear this almost fixation on the vaccine. If we were doing and putting the kind of same level of push to those other measures, I believe we would still get, the same, at least more coverage as we continue, especially in a context where the vaccine is not universally available. The last bit in that regard is the rights under the Constitution of Jamaica. So you have the right to freedom of thought, freedom of conscience, freedom of religious views, privacy, and your own family life. So when we talk about those rights under the Constitution, it is that that makes us a democratic society, that people can choose, that listen, I have looked into this and I am not sure. I'm not clear. I don't think that I want to take this vaccine. And
Mhm.
that's a choice that they have. And we know that your individual right constitutionally is balanced against the rights of others. But at this point in time, in the context in which we are, it's
Mhm.
those persons also, every individual has that right under our law. So when you take that into consideration, then you consider now as an employer how it is that is going to work if you seek to now mandate the vaccine. So looking at it, um, for persons who are going to be new to employment, I'm of the view that a prospective employee could be
Mhm.
asked as a condition to come into employment to provide to be vaccinated,
Yeah.
or accept that as soon as it becomes readily available, they undertake to be vaccinated. The truth be told, then it is that they would enter almost wide-eyed,
Mhm.
um, eyes wide open, so they will know that this is a requirement, to get the job. So we do have some of these actually happening now. You have persons, if you're going to be working in any kind of food establishment, for example,
Mhm.
101, you have to get a food handler's permit. Yes,
Yeah.
because of the public health requirements, for example. Or if you are going into certain roles, they're asking you to subject yourself to criminal records background check,
Mhm.
right? So it is a similar concept could be considered in terms of when you're coming in as a new hire,
Okay.
right? And so in that case, you would then be able to make the choice before you enter that employment relationship to say
Well,
that exactly whether or not you would subject yourself to vaccination at that point, right? Now, it's a little bit more challenging when you're already in employment.
mhm.
Yes, because then you would have had an employment contract, which prior to now may not have had that requirement. So, if an employer wants to insist that you have to be vaccinated as a condition for continued employment, you have to be very careful as an employer because unless you have a term in the contract that could impute that, it is more likely than not going to be a breach of the employment contract, especially if you seek to do it unilaterally,
Okay.
right? Because then this may be considered a breach of the implied term of mutual trust and confidence with the employee, and the employee can then decide that they will resign and claim constructive dismissal because that's not what they signed up for. Hmm?
Okay.
And so the employer needs to be very careful and keep that in mind. From a practical standpoint, as we said previously, um, you know, if you don't have unimpeded access to the vaccine, it would be very challenging for you to mandate it, right? It's not that you can go down to the store, buy it, and say, it's right here, come and get it
Yeah.
at this point in time,
At
at
this point
least,
in time. Yeah.
right? And of course, it comes back to something that Lauren spoke to. If persons have a legitimate reason that they are not eligible to take the vaccine.
Yes. Yeah.
So if you have some medical reason that your medical practitioner recommends that you do not take the vaccine, or if you have, for example, a religious reason
Mhm.
that you feel highly that you will never be vaccinated for anything, for example.
Yeah.
um, those are things that an employer should take into account in terms of whether or not they're seeking to mandate. Rochelle, I did a little research. There's a public
Mhm.
health immunization regulations of
Yes.
1986, and that actually mandates parents to have their children vaccinated. That is why those of us with children know that if you're trying to get your child out into any institution, apart from birth certificate, the next thing they're going to ask you for is your child's immunization passport, and that is a guideline actually mandated by the legislation. I have it here, that you must have your child within a particular age group being vaccinated in order for them to, be in concert with other children. But even this um, regulation that is on our books has derogations. It states that if your medical practitioner says you have contraindications and they provide you with a certificate, you are not. You will be excused almost from, I said almost meaning using the word excused from having the vaccination. So
Yeah.
even with the legislation framework that we have that does mandate it for a specific class of people, they have taken into account that there may be some persons within that class that still may not be able to take it. So that is something to also consider as an example. Should we ever get to the stage where our government feels that they are going to mandate the vaccine? We are not there at this
Yes.
point in time.
And certainly, from the information you've provided, Employers, certainly for new hires, it can be a condition of employment, but for existing employees, it is advised that it is not a mandated requirement that would no go afoul of your employment contract.
Right. So that
Um,
takes me to the few recommendations, and then I'll hand right back to you.
Thank you.
So some of them comes right back to the stuff that some of what I heard Lauren say. So it's really symbiosis with your program today. We would be encouraging employers to consider providing information to their employees, public education, get the Ministry of Health and Wellness in, get your occupational nurse in, get your company doctor in to share information, data around the vaccine, what it does, what it doesn't do, public education, so that persons can be encouraged to make their own informed decision to voluntarily take the vaccine. So that would really help in terms of giving people information to make an informed decision.
This is
Now, where you have a union, a staff association, or other such collective representation, or even if you don't, the employer would be encouraged to consult and discuss with their employees the need for your business to have that. Now, the nature of your business is also going to be very important as you look at that. But we find, certainly from my experience, when you speak to persons or you engage with them and you share with them and hear their ideas and their thoughts and get to a consensual approach, that works much better than poking things down one's throat.
okay.
Now, there's another aspect of this. Interestingly, this morning I heard Supreme Ventures putting out something that would encourage the vaccination process, albeit using the platform that is available to them.
Mhm.
For those persons who are going along that line. But to segue, there's no legal impediment that stops an employer from incentivizing employees in that regard, right? So they can have discretionary bonuses, other tangible benefits. There's nothing that at this point in time stops an employer from providing those incentives as a consideration for persons to take the vaccine. However, a note of caution, as you exercise your right as an employer, be careful that it is not discriminatory to persons who choose not to. They still have their choice. So a balanced approach in dealing with that. Consider establishing a company policy around COVID-19 protocols and keep on top of what is happening. This is an evolving situation. It's not static.
Mhm.
What happened last year, March 10, July last year, even December,
Yes.
it's quite a different situation from where we are right now,
Mhm.
and so it's important. I remember when we started, Rochelle, the DRM orders, they were like 7 pages. When I went to look in preparing to come here, we're at 72 pages for the DRM order,
Exactly.
right? And as time goes on and as things change and you try to expand the various reaches whilst making sure that you cover the persons, it's an evolving situation. So keep your staff advised, have your policies in place, and as things move and change, you adjust and keep everybody in tow. Lastly, if an employee does not wish or still doesn't agree after all of those steps to be vaccinated, look for alternatives within your organization. If you
Mhm.
can find another place where they can go and somebody who is willing to take the vaccine will swap with them, that keeps them out of harm's way and less exposure, consider alternatives to keep them in employment, right? But it is not advisable to move unilaterally to summarily terminate someone on the basis that they have not taken it. If you do so, I have to tell you that there is a likelihood that an employee can say this is not a proper reason, depending on the nature of how it is done, and it could give rise to an unjustifiable dismissal claim. And there could be a reasonable prospect of success if you go through that process.
Yes.
Right? So it's not advisable to, on that sole reason, terminate an employee. And finally, if it really comes down to a termination and you have to see the end, see if there is a mutual agreement that can be had between the employee and the employer to amicably exit. If it, as a last resort, that is something that you have looked to. I have known some persons have also contemplated layoffs in these changed circumstances because of the nature of what is going on for a period of time, to see if that person over the time may, soften their views, or something else may happen. As I say, this is an evolving situation, and the main point that I think every employer and every employee should appreciate is that there's no right answer, and that each party, there is a symbiotic approach. Each party needs the other. And so it's important for them to share, discuss, see how best they can find ways to work through, because the employer needs their good solid staff in order to continue their business, and the employee needs their job.
Yeah.
So that's the views right now.
And Carla, I see CovidCastJA says a very balanced, intelligent analysis from an industrial relations perspective. The Ministry of Labor would do well engaging the services of Mrs. Harris Roper. Excellent. I see Caronia puts her email address. I think Caronia wants to make sure that she gets this week. JB says, I'm advising my clients to enforce strict workplace protocol for unvaccinated employees. Thanks for that, JB.
Yes.
They would have to wear masks all day and won't be allowed to use common areas like the lunchroom and canteen. So there are various mechanisms that employers can engage in, but I think what you're saying is it's a balanced approach. Employers need to ensure that they're keeping on top of what is happening, because what happened in December is certainly not what is affecting us now. In addition, there are various mechanisms where when you're a new hire could be required to be vaccinated. But we also have to be mindful that there is an immunization legislation.
Yes, but only for school children. Only for school children. So I was using it as an example.
Yeah, but that also could change. So the reality is to ensure that we are keeping ourselves abreast of the information, and to remember that our employers have rights, our employees have rights, our people have rights. Yandi Yaya says, I love all angles, Mrs. Harris Roper, great. Tiki Ricky says, isn't that discriminatory? I'm not sure which one of the points Tiki Ricky is making.
Maybe the incentives.
So yes, but Tiki Ricky would suggest too that you look at the memo that we have for this week, a very balanced approach, looking at all of the legislative, so what the law says, and also making various recommendations in regard to the vaccine. So today's program, we've looked at the raw data about how people feel about the vaccinations. We've now just had Carla Ann Harris Roper, who is principal consultant for Employment Matters Caribbean, and who is one of our premier employment lawyers in Jamaica. Very, very well a real expert. And this week, she has provided for us COVID-19 vaccines. What next? Implications for employment law in Jamaica. Jerome says he spoke about employees, but not what about contract workers? A large number of companies have most of their workers on contracts. Can a contract worker be forced to take the vaccine? So Jerome, in regard to contract workers, you could have a situation where for a new contract, a new contractor is required to take a vaccine, and I think the same kind of discussions that Carla had about existing contracts, that you can't force new clauses into existing contracts without both parties agreeing to same. So, Tiki, this is not about forcing our people to do something against their will. This program is to inform both sides of what the various provisions of our law are and what are the rights associated with that. So the other thing now is that we needed to look at an industry that the whole question of vaccines would be a major discussion in the tourism industry. And we have Nicola Madden-Gregg, Group Director of Marketing and Sales, the Courtly Hospitality Group, and first Vice President of the Caribbean Hotel and Tourism Association. Now, she is a seasoned tourism specialist, one of our resources, certainly for the tourism industry. She's also on the board of the Pegasus Hotels of Jamaica, the tourism product development company TPDCO, and National Hotels and Properties Limited. And Nicola received an MBA from the University of West Indies and an undergraduate degree from the Florida International University. So Nicola, you have been hearing all of the discussion so far. You heard some of the data that Lauren presented, and some of the legal considerations that Carla presented. What are just some of your initial views based on the discussion so far?
Well, these are all things that have been an active discussion, not only here in Jamaica, but across the wider Caribbean. And we have done surveys of our various hotel associations and our membership around the whole issue of vaccination and what it would mean from an employment point of view. But I think what has been good for the industry is that we have been on an educational campaign for quite a while now, dealing with not only vaccination, but of course, just being able to follow the tourism protocols and make sure persons are keeping safe, wearing their masks, social distancing, hand sanitizing. And of course, we have a very, very detailed set of protocols for tourism, starting right from the airport, the transportation providers, the hotels, the attractions, and every single step of that destination journey. So it has been part of our DNA. And we have been working with our team members and doing training from day one, from the get-go. So before we reopened last June, a lot of time and energy was spent on that. And when vaccinations were coming into play, we, of course, with vaccines, we spent time and energy again, training and educating persons on the process.
So, in fact, for the tourism industry, the vaccination, as Carla mentioned, is not a silver bullet. The protocols are still not just relevant, a very, very important requirement for the tourism industry.
That is true. So right now, as you're aware, because of supply issues, which is a worldwide issue, but definitely for us in Jamaica and the Caribbean, it's impossible right now to have the access for persons to get vaccinated, even if they want to. So we did have the blitz earlier this year, and we did get quite a few of the employees within tourism vaccinated. But generally speaking, there is still a shortage of supply. And so we found that on some days, there were employees that couldn't get vaccinated and were turned back from certain centers. So we feel that, in our own survey of our membership and of our employees and team members, we have seen that shift where, just like Lauren presented from Blue Dot, you saw a lot more hesitancy. You were more in the 30%. And we've seen that shift where people are more keen to get vaccinated. But again, sometimes it is depending on which vaccine is available. Some are more keen to do the Johnson & Johnson or the Moderna or the Pfizer. So I think once we have some more options, we will see again a better take up. But I definitely believe that we will see the take up continue.
Okay. So we're seeing an increase in our tourist arrivals. We're currently seeing an uptick. Do we believe that our visitors, when persons are choosing destinations, that it will matter to them what's the kind of vaccination level in a destination, or are they more concerned that protocols are being adhered to?
Well, it's a combination. So, for example, right now, as some people may or may not be aware, the UK has a traffic light system.
Yes.
So they have decided that they are flying or allowing international travel only to destinations that follow good protocols, have very good protocols in place. Two, that have a low incidence of the virus at the moment, and so their positivity rate is low. And three, they are also looking at the vaccination rate. So what percentage of the population is vaccinated? So Jamaica, along with nearly every other Caribbean country, is in the amber level. So you have red, amber, green. And so right now we do have travel between the UK and Jamaica, but one of our major partners is not flying as yet because their insurance is not allowing them to one of the reasons, to a country that is not at a certain level of vaccination. So that's part of the problem. So you have also some customers who are just happy to know that the protocols are in place. They do their pre-tests. So we do the COVID pre-test 72 hours prior to arrival. They follow all the protocols on the island, mask wearing, social distancing, all of the usual things. And we are seeing a definite uptick. So from the US market, we are seeing quite a bit of growth in travel. In May, for example, we were back to, I think, about 115,000 stopover arrivals, which was about 55% of pre-COVID 2019 May figures. So that's really going in the right direction. So I don't think it's a barrier to entry, but at the same time, it can prevent certain markets from traveling. So the UK is one of the challenge ones. Canada is another challenge one. And so we have to look at it from that point of view. But more importantly, we have to look at it from the protection of our communities and our team members. So, you know, we can't just look at it purely from an industry point of view. So I got my first jab, as they say, and I have underlying conditions, and so does nearly everybody in my family, and we've always all got the first jab. And I had concerns, and I, went to my doctor and spoke to a second doctor and a third doctor, and I did it, and I think I had like 1 hour of a slight temperature, and that was it. Nothing else. So it was more worry than anything else. And what I said to myself is, it's important that if you get vaccinated, it does give some protection, not only to you from getting a more serious case of COVID, but it does provide some element of protection. It's still transmissible, but the rate of transmission is a lot lower. So we have to think about it from that point of view. There's also the impact of persons if all of us decide, we're not getting vaccinated, and more and more of us get ill with disease. I mean, it's literally a percentage game. So the more the virus is in the community, the more persons are going to get ill. The more persons will require hospitalization. The more pressure comes on the system. The more possibility of people dying. And so I don't want to contribute to that pressure. And I think that's what we all have to think about from the point of view. So we want to be able to open back up, not only tourism, entertainment, other sections. We want to all be able to go back to normalcy. But to be able to do that, some of us have to step up to the plate and get that vaccine so that we can be in a much better space. And I can tell you, since getting my first shot, there is a sense of calm, a little bit more, you feel a little bit more comfortable interacting. And I didn't think I would, but it has happened. And generally speaking, you still have to do all your things, wear your mask, social distance and everything else. But when persons come close to you, don't probably tense up as much because you figure in your head that, well, even if I do get it, my chances of survival are much more improved.
Yeah.
So for tourism, it's an ongoing process. It's continuous training, continuous. We have to be on top of all the changes that are happening worldwide. We have to keep looking at what amendments we can make to our protocols to make sure that we continue to be able to open up the industry.
Yeah. I actually thought it was interesting that it wasn't a situation that you just said vaccines are here, let me go and get a vaccine. You had underlying issues. You had to get information for yourself.
Yes.
Because we're seeing a lot of that discussion in the comments. And I think that's one of the key things is for us to get our own information.
Correct.
So, yeah. And from medical professionals too. So
I'm going to share a little data with you if you don't mind. I just one page
Yes.
that I just wanted to just pop up on the screen, which I thought would be interesting for us to look at. Let me make sure I'm doing the right thing. Are you seeing my screen?
Not yet.
Yes, this one coming quickly. Okay, so if we just look at this one slide.
Mm-hmm.
This is, let me go back. This is the share of fully vaccinated people and partially vaccinated as of June 9th. And I thought it was important just to look at us in context of some of the other islands in the Caribbean and to the world. And as you can see, unfortunately, Jamaica is at the bottom of the table.
Yes.
And part of that is supply issues, yes, but also part of that is our nervousness around vaccination. But Cayman is way out there. They're up over 70%. And we see some of our main competitors in the Caribbean, DOMREP, is also pretty high. Bahamas, which is also another major competitor for us, is ahead of us. So these are things that can impact recovery. And it's important that we all think about it from that context as well.
Yes. And another thing, because we're looking at worldwide some of that data for the vaccination rates. Do we see it as a potential for the future? Because things change so quickly that almost like a COVID passport is going to be needed for persons to enter certain countries, but that we may in Jamaica also require that people are vaccinated before they come here. Do you think that's something that is going to
There's a lot of discussions around that, a passport or some sort of identity card. As you know, yellow fever, for example, you have to go to Brazil and a lot of the Latin American countries, you have to get your shot and you have to have your yellow fever card. So it's not a new idea. What makes it challenging is accessibility.
Yes.
So if it was the vaccines were widely available, every country, every person could easily get one, then the fairness of saying, yes, in order to travel, you must be vaccinated, then that would probably go well. But right now, the WTCC, which is the World Travel and Tourism Council, is not for that. The CHTA also, the Caribbean Hotel and Tourist Association, and JHTA, the Jamaica Hotel and Tourist Association, we are not in favor of mandatory vaccination for travel. We have opened Jamaica and a lot of other tourism destinations strictly on protocols, which has worked very well for Jamaica in terms of our resilience corridors and what we have done there. And to date, knock wood, there has been insignificant evidence regarding any transmission between guests and staff or staff and guests.
Yeah.
And even for outgoing tests for persons leaving the country to go to the US, again, negligible rates of any positivity. So the protocols have worked. So with that being said, and having been able to open tourism under those protocols and have been able to protect our workers and ourselves as well as our guests, mandatory vaccination in light of not having availability would be complicated. But there is, what it is happening is though that some of the airlines are doing passports where, because through using technology, if you're vaccinated, it gives you fast track and other access. So it's now almost preferential treatment then for persons who are vaccinated. As you can see, quarantine time is being reduced. In the US, for example, the CDC has said if you are fully vaccinated, you don't have to wear a mask in public. And so being vaccinated is going to give you certain benefits, not necessarily prevent non-vaccinated people from travel, but you maybe have to stay in the longer mile. You have to do more tests. You have to maybe fill out more forms. You'll have to be more monitored. The risk factor. So it's like a risk reward. So if you get vaccinated, you're getting some reward because now you're seen as low risk. And so you can enjoy things, do things that persons who are unvaccinated may be seen as a higher risk. So that's the trade-off.
Okay. And I see a comment here. Angelo, you know, we love the commentary. He says, Cayman's population is significantly smaller than ours. Therefore, I would not compare Cayman and Jamaica.
Well, we're looking at a per capita basis and percentage of the population that has been vaccinated. And that's really what the analysis that is done by the international markets when they're deciding to fly or not fly or give recommendations as one of the criteria. It's done on the percentage of the population, the per capita rate.
Yes. And can you tell us a little bit, Nicola, about the recovery? Because we are hearing about some recovery. What kind of recovery are we seeing? Are we seeing Airbnbs picking up, smaller hotel properties picking up? What are we seeing happening?
Yes, we're seeing it across the spectrum. I think summer will be, fairly increased in terms of activity. A lot of hotels are already seeing up to 50% occupancy, but it's still an uphill battle. I mean, we're coming from zero. And then for most of last year into this year, in the teens or single digit figures, maybe a high of 20-some%. So villas have done well because the villa market in Jamaica has got a lot of support from the local Jamaicans for staycations. So they have done very well, and some of the Airbnbs as well. So yes, we're seeing that. Where is the struggle? Is still in business travel. So our Kingston properties are having a harder time. Leisure is coming back faster than business, corporate travel, conferences, groups. That's where we're seeing a lot more difficulty. So, the market is opening up, but not maybe as fast as some of our players would like. As you know, cruise is still shut down totally. So the players in our industry who have the cruise sector as their main breadwinner or stay, they're having difficulties. Transportation providers, attractions, craft vendors, so it's a mixed bag. So some recovery on one hand, but we're not anywhere near full recovery as yet. So it's an uphill battle. We have to be whole hands. Between private and public sector, we have meetings sometimes daily. We are constantly talking and trying to see how we can continue to make this thing work, to continue to keep the industry open, keep people employed. So many persons have lost their jobs in our industry, and we're getting back closer to employment now, but even not at the same salary rate, because some persons are still on this, a reduced salary for especially at the management level. So it's been a challenge, but the good thing is there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and we are working very hard and very strong and as a team to get us there.
So this is a time where, as Carla mentioned, there's always something else being added to the picture. So last year at this time, we're talking just about layoffs and redundancies in where employment is concerned. Now vaccinations are added to it, the workplace safety. There's so many things that are added with curfews, lockdowns. It is over a year later, so we would have anticipated we'd have been much further along. But you did mention the light at the end of the tunnel. And can you share with us some of the potential light we're seeing? What's the outlook that we're seeing over the next couple of months into 2022?
Well, we know there's an extreme amount of pent-up demand. People have been in their homes.
So it's real. Pent-up demand is real.
Yes, they want to travel, they want to get out. The Caribbean is also near shore. Jamaica is near shore to the US market, which is our largest provider of tourism travelers to Jamaica. Of course, the UK being number 2 and Canada being number 2, UK number 3, and the Caribbean being number 4. So those are our top markets. So we are seeing obviously an uptick in demand, or the forward bookings. I think winter will be off the chain in terms of occupancies once nothing else happens, because some new variant or something else. But if we continue our vaccination program, the government, as was announced earlier, we're looking at another 1.2 million doses of the J&J. So once we continue and our population continues to get vaccinated, that reduces some of the risk, reduces the pressure on the system. For those who may be nervous about traveling to countries that aren't vaccinated or they're not 100% sure, they know the protocols, but they want that added protection, those persons will now start to move. So right now you're seeing that those early movers who, they are going to take the risk and they're going to travel, even though maybe where they're coming to is not fully vaccinated, but the protocols work, and they've seen that. So they're going to come to Jamaica, and Jamaica is a hot brand, and we've done very well in keeping people safe and them enjoying their vacations when they're here. So we see that. There's also just the business market in terms of the group section for 2022, 23, 24. We're starting to see a lot of RFPs or requests for proposals coming in for group business down the road. So we are going to recover, no doubt about it. We will come back big and better, and we will definitely have success in tourism. It's just really having our entities, our organizations on the ground, being able to survive through the rough times. And that's the hand-holding that is needed, because of course, cash flow is a challenge, lots of bills to pay, no money coming in or very little. We've been running in the industry, for most tourism entities, especially hotels, if you're not at 70-80% occupancy, you're breaking even or you're making a loss.
Yeah, because lights still have to turn on, everything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So paying security, insurance, GPS, water, everything else is still going. And you still have staff that you have maintained, trying to keep as many people employed. So, that digging everybody be digging out of that hole that has been created is going to be challenging. Mm-hmm.
Yes. Angelo says, I saw a bunch of tourists walking the other day. It was the strangest thing I'd seen in a while, but I loved what I saw. Says, I do believe there will not be enough planes and ships to bring all who want to come to Jamaica whenever we are fully reopened. And we're hoping that's a problem that we will have, that there's just not enough transportation because we're full. Thank you very much, Nicola. Always a pleasure to have you and your very balanced approach to our discussion. So thank you very much for your contribution. That's Nicola Madden, Group Director of Marketing and Sales, the Courtly Hospitality Group, and First VP Caribbean Hotel and Tourism Association. And she gave us the perspective of what's happening in the tourist industry. We still have to maintain the protocols, notwithstanding vaccinations. She gave us some views on whether vaccination passports will be required and what will be the benefits of being vaccinated. Carla Ann Harris Roper, our attorney at law, took us through on a journey through some of the employment considerations that are necessary for employers to consider where vaccinations are concerned. And again, the weekly memo, I see some people putting their email addresses. We've noted and will ensure that you get your weekly memo. And Larian Peart shared with us, so we're not just putting our finger in the air to say this is what people feel. He shared with us some actual data from the field of how people are viewing the vaccinations. We still see quite a bit of doubt. Some persons not sure where to go for their second jab. Some persons still concerned about matters such as their underlying illnesses. He mentioned that certainly in terms of demographics, as we go outside of urban areas, persons are less likely. We have Tiki Ricky, who has been our commentator through this evening. Thank you very much for being on, Tiki Ricky. He says, lied for us to take the jab, not knowing how it will affect us. So we know Tiki Ricky not into the vaccine at all. It has been good for us to see the various views. We've asked for the various views of our viewers on the vaccination. Thank you very, very, very much for this very engaging evening, not just from our speakers, but certainly from our audience. And Sandra says, enjoyed all our speakers. Thanks, Team PSOJ, for another night well spent. And please, Sandra and our viewers, we encourage you to spend your Thursday nights with us from 7:30 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. We are going to be looking at real estate. Next week, investment in real estate. We're going to be looking at things like what types of properties are hot now, how as business people, what properties should we be investing in. So we're going to be looking at real estate over the next few weeks. Please tune in. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's episode 57. Tonight we looked at vaccinations. What's next for Jamaica? Join us every week, 7:30 for CovidCastJA. Make sure you email us, sme@psoj.org. Do not miss our weekly memos. So, for instance, when we talk about real estate, we're going to talk about things like the different types of mortgages, how you work through mortgages, but very importantly, the different legal considerations when you're buying property, sale agreement, and so on. So it's all kind of information that you will get right here on CovidCastJA. Claudette says, excellent discussions and very informative. Excellent presenters, Carla and Harris Roper, Nicola Madden Greg. I see people sending in for the weekly memo. Let me tell you, the weekly memo, you have to get it. So see you next week for another episode of CovidCastJA right here, presented to you by the private sector organization of Jamaica through our sponsors, NCB Group and JMMB Group. See you next week. Wear your mask, sanitize, stay safe. So you have a great idea to start a business, but you don't know where to start. We completely understand. You have a lot of questions and almost no answers. Smallbusinessportal.com is here to help. At smallbusinessportal.com, you gain access to information on loans, grants, and investment opportunities from verified financial institutions. Guess what you also get? Useful business tips, access to training. All these services combine to make your business idea into a reality. Start your journey today at smallbusinessportal.com.